Hello, this is Stephen Nojiri, and this is a new channel with a new purpose and a new, different view. As you will see in my previous channel, my previous work was relegated to the Shinobi no Mono research community, the ninja community, as it were, samurai research, and within that, ninja research. Now I've moved away from that, as some of you know. In this new project, this new channel, these new audio clips, videos are not me going back to that. So I am finished with the quote unquote ninja community. Before we go on to what the project is, let me just again clarify that. I am moving on from the ninja community. I have moved on. I am no longer I for all of the viewers should understand that Stephen Nojiri is no longer associated with this group or associated with that group or is against this group or is against that group, has interest toward this or interest toward that. That's all finished. That's all done. Um, Whatever is going on in the sort of ninja community is no longer my concern. So if individuals from the ninja community want to listen to these audio files, watch these videos, that's fine. But again, I no longer am a member or a player in that drama, that game that is known as the sort of ninja community. And that's not just the Western ninja community; it's also the Japanese ninja community. Everything involved, and I'm not even going to mention names, but just everything that involves all of the different players, whether it be from personal interest businessmen to academics. I am no longer part of those dynamics and done. So this first video, or really audio, is to explain what the new direction is about. Now, some of you some of you will be brand new to my work. Some of you will be familiar with my work. So for those who are familiar with the work, you may have some insight to this, as I left some social media postings essentially explaining this. But for the sake of of clarity and for anybody who's unfamiliar with those posts, we will now go into what it is that I am working on now, what this channel and these videos, what this current project is about. So from here on out, this is all associated with or focused on the Jin Gundin, specifically the Tada Genji Jingunden. Now, I need to explain what that is, and there will be other videos that go into more in depth about this. But here is the very brief introduction. The word Jin Gundin can also be pronounced Shin Gundin, and actually, the majority of people do pronounce it Shin Gundin. However, I'm going with the Jin Gundin pronunciation because it's oftentimes pronounced Shin Gundin, and it's translated, it's conceptualized as divine military tradition. However, there is a bit of a misunderstanding there. It's not. It's the true meaning gets lost in that. While that's accurate, it's accurate. It's sort of accurate later in the conceptual process. So going with Jin Gundin, it's more clear. The kanji remain the same, but the difference in the pronunciation clarifies the meaning. The pronunciation of Jin instead of Shin at the beginning also correlates with the Jino Shotoki, which is a very famous Shinto text, but it's also a Southern court manual. I've discussed this previously, and there will be a video explaining that. So, Jin Gundin. Again, Shin Gundin, divine military tradition. That's usually what you would see. Now, this is a topic that is not really covered in English. So when I say generally this, I'm referring to Japanese academics, people who are Japanese historians. So, Shin Gundin. But anyway, Jin Gundin. It means imperial military traditions. And what it refers to specifically are the military traditions of the imperial court from the time when the imperial court was more directly involved in military exploits. Now this goes back to Emperor Jimmu and his military campaign. Then it goes to where Bushi houses branched from the imperial family and became the sort of imperial security forces or imperial military arm, thus as we know the samurai. So part of the tradition is built from imperial traditions, that military traditions from the imperial family or the imperial household, the emperors themselves directly, and traditions created early on by the Bushi, such as the Genji, who are direct blood descendants from the imperial court, from the emperors, and then those traditions that they created early on in service to the imperial court. So, imperial traditions and military traditions created by imperial descendants in service to the imperial court. These two combined into Jin Gundin, imperial military traditions. Now, of course, the reason people would say Shin or divine is because the first kanji of Jin Gundin is the kanji for kami. But in this particular case, even though you sort of, the average person would read that as God or divine, it, like in the title Jino Shotoki, it is meant to refer specifically to the imperial court, which if you don't know where that connection comes from, you basically you need to go study the basics of sort of like Shinto and Japanese history. But in a nutshell, the imperial family is descended from the sun goddess. So the imperial family is considered a form of divinity. So if the imperial family, if the actual emperor is conducting something, it's considered to be connected to divine action, to divine happenings. Thus, if it's imperial, it's also godly, or it is associated with the gods. Thus, divine military tradition is meant to actually be Jin Gundin, the imperial military traditions. So, this channel will take the Tada Genji Jingunden as the starting hub, the main point. And the reason for that is pretty straightforward. I am Stephen Nojiri. The Nojiri are descended from the Tada Genji. Henceforth, I have the easiest, quickest access and personal motivation to go that route. And it is truly that simple. So, starting from that point, we then also incorporate the Shotoku Jingunden, the Tachibana Jingunden, and the Southern Court or the Nancho Jingunden, and the Kusunoki Den or the Kusunoki tradition. Even though the Kusunoki tradition isn't technically a Jingunden, it is so interlocked or interwoven with the Tada, with these other Jingundens, of course with the Southern Court Jingunden, that it basically becomes, you can either consider the Kusunoki tradition by itself isn't exactly a Jingunden, but because of its shared history and its interwovenness, it becomes interlocked with the Jingunden so much that it essentially becomes a fifth Jingunden of its own. So, these 5 traditions. Tada Genji Jingunden, which is the divine military tradition that comes down through the Tada Genji. And then, like I said, the Shotoku Jingunden, which is a Jingunden that allegedly comes down from Shotoku, from Prince Shotoku. And then the Tachibana Jingunden, which comes down through the Tachibana. So if you remember the imperial family, if you guys, maybe you guys have to know your basic samurai history. So Fujiwara, Genji, Taira, Tachibana, the four sort of original clans, right? It's a little more complicated than that, but for simplicity's sake, we'll say these four, right? The four original sort of Bushi clans. And then, so the Tachibana have a Jingunden. The Taira, I'm not sure where the Heishi Jingunden. I don't even. I guess they don't have one. I have never. I have no reason to believe the Heishi developed a Jingunden, but it kind of makes sense too, considering what they did. But if there was one, it appears to be gone. There appears to be no record of it. Nothing, nothing. So you have the Genji Jingunden, the Tachibana Jingunden. We the As far as the Fujiwara go, I also know of no Fujiwara Jingunden. So Tachibana Jingunden and Genji Jingunden, specifically the Tada Genji Jingunden. So Tada Genji is a branch of the Genji is a massive number of families. There's a specific line called the Tada Genji. So the Tada Genji is also associated closely with the Setsu Genji. So Setsu Genji and Tada Genji is essentially the same line. There's a subtle difference, but it's basically the exact same people. To essentially, if your family descends from an individual named Tada Manju from history, then it's essentially Tada. Then it's a Tada Genji line. So another name for Tada Manju is Genji Mitsunaka. So if your line descends from Genji Mitsunaka, you are Tada Genji. Even though it's a little bit more complicated than that. Not everybody descended from Genji Mitsunaka is a Tada Genji, but that's kind of the generic starting point. But it's not that simple. So Tada Genji Jingunden, and then again Shotoko Jingunden, which is a collection of teachings. So the Shotoko Jingunden, a lot of you will hear that and instantly call foul. The Shotoko Jingunden isn't necessarily saying that it entirely comes from Prince Shotoku. What it's basically saying is that Prince Shotoku started the ball rolling, and then from that ball rolling, over the centuries, this tradition built up. It's tied very much to something called Mononobe Shinto. So it's a type of Shinto. So the Shotoko Jingunden and the Tachibana Jingunden are not only Bushi traditions of warfare, but they are very, very packed, full, inseparable from styles of Shinto. So like Tachibana Shinto and Tachibana Jingunden, you can't really study to be honest. So I'm saying that you essentially to Shotoko Jingunden and Tachibana Jingunden are also the study of those styles of Shinto. More so than the Tada Genji Jingunden. The Tada Genji Jingunden has a lot of Buddhism and a lot of Shinto. And as you know, the Southern Court and the Kusunoki is just leaking with Buddhism, just infused with Buddhism. And they also have a lot of Shinto as well. But the Shotoko tradition, which is interesting again, because of course Shotoko, again, the historical figure Shotoku is extremely Buddhist. But over the centuries, the particular ball rolling is very Shinto. And then the Tachibana tradition is like absolutely Shinto. So as we look into this, there's going to be a lot of religious aspects to everything. There's going to be a lot of military, tactical engagement teachings. There's going to be a lot of culture and religious teachings as well from these five. So as you see on the screen, these are the five. So the hub is going to be the Tada Genji tradition. But these other four overlap so much that all of these are interlinked to the point where when you study one of them, you are invariably, unavoidably studying the other ones as well. to an extent. So and it becomes very clear. Like in the beginning, when I was studying, I was studying Kusunoki over here, and then I was looking at its relationship to the Southern court tradition, and then I was looking at the Tada Genji over here, and then I was seeing how these three interlock so deeply. And then I got involved with looking at the Shotoko tradition, and then when I saw how that was interlocked, I couldn't resist but looking into the Tachibana tradition and seeing, and then I realized how much that was interlocked. So these five are so interlocked. It is you can't, again, to study one, you really forced to end up studying all of them to an extent. But for the purpose of this channel, we will use the Tada Genji as the staging ground, as the primary platform, and then from there we will look into all of them. And in the end, the plan is one cohesive vision of what Jin Gundin is.